It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, this whole real estate mindset. It's time, it's effort, it's energy. It takes a lot to be successful.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode 67. So a couple months ago, I had Justin Workman and Rob Minch on the show to kind of deconstruct some advice that Dave Ramsey had given. And that episode turned out to be quite popular. I got a lot of great feedback from our listeners. And a lot of people said, why don't you have Justin and Rob back on the show? So they are here today. Rob Minch and Justin Workman, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, glad to be back again.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you guys back. And I thought that this time, instead of deconstruct Dave Ramsey's advice, we would take some questions from our listeners and answer them.
Let's go.
You guys ready?
Yeah, can't wait.
All right, let's just get right into it here. You know, every now and then people contact me with questions. And by the way, if you have a question that you'd like us to talk about at some point, you can email me at brian@higinvestor.com. I'll spell that for you, BRIAN at HIGinvestor, INVESTOR.com. And maybe you'll get to hear your question answered on our show. Starting with Barry from Chicago, who writes, Brian, I am thinking of joining a mentorship group that costs over $25,000. For this amount, I'll be able to work one-on-one with a coach who will help me do my first wholesale deal. I'll also have access to training and potential buyers around the country. So Barry's question is, have you ever paid for coaching or mentoring, and do you think this is a good idea? So who wants to tackle that first? Rob?
Sure. I never have personally paid for mentoring, but I would say if you are just beginning, that it would be a very good thing, and you will most likely make that money back many times over through not making the mistakes that people typically make without having the experience and understand what's going on.
So you would be in favor of paying $25,000
to the new person who really is going to take it serious. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Justin, what about you? Have you ever paid for mentoring or coaching?
I've never paid for the mentoring or coaching. I've paid for a lot of classes, courses, that type of thing. But I feel that in today's world, with all the information out there and the networking opportunities that you have, the RIA groups that are out there, I think if you would get tied into those, your $25,000 would be better off spent working a deal than paying for the personal coaching on some national level. Most people are going to work their market, their niche, first. So I think you could find somebody in your market and work with them on it, partner with them. Bring everything you have to them and just split a deal. I mean, yes, it's not going to be as much money, but you're gaining kind of a mentor along the way by giving them a share in your profit on a deal. I guess $25,000. I know there's programs that range from 10 to 50 or more now, but it's a lot of money to spend when you don't have it starting out. And I think spending it on a national mentor it could be beneficial. There's no doubt. I'm sure those programs work well. I just think you could find somebody on a local level and you would get a lot more one-on-one time and personal attention. And by giving them a share or a portion of your first deal, you'd be far better off.
Well, let me turn that answer back on you there. If someone came up to you, because you buy, you rehab, and then you sell on lease to own, right?
Yeah, or sell outright or rent. Yeah.
So have you had people come up to you and say, Justin, let me work with you, let me help you so I can learn and you can be my mentor?
Yep.
What's your typical response to that?
I've had it a couple times. I've had it both ways. I am more than willing to kind of roughly go over numbers with people. People we meet at different RIA groups, meetup groups, that type of thing. I'm more than happy to sit down and talk about projects and numbers and what things should
But that's
cost.
very different from mentoring and coaching.
It is
though.
very different. I have offered one person at one point to kind of partner up on a deal, but the problem they had is they didn't have a deal in the beginning, and they weren't willing to really find a deal. They just wanted me to do everything, and they wanted to kind of sit along for the ride and make money.
So they weren't bringing value
Exactly.
to you,
And
that
that's-
made it worth your time.
Yeah, but if somebody came to me with a project that they had and wanted me to work alongside them, I'd be more than willing to do that. You know, if I can make some money and all I have to do is show up a little bit here and there, why wouldn't you take advantage of that opportunity? And now what that looks like is a little tough, but it takes the first steps. You know, I have enough going on in my life, as of all of you guys too. It's got to take the right person. That connection's got to be there in some other facet. You're not just going to take anybody off the street, but I'd be happy to sit down with somebody that wanted to do that. If they could find a house they wanted to rehab and wanted to partner on it, and they had, you know, everything else lined up, why wouldn't you step into that situation and help them through it?
You know, there's two sides to this equation. You have the mentor and the coach, where we can only share our experience.
Yes.
But we don't really have the time or the energy to hold someone accountable. But then you have the mentee, the person who wants to be coached. And I actually think that, you know, coaching and mentorship can be very valuable, but you have to be the right type of person to be coached.
You only get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah, exactly. You only get
Yes.
out what you put into it. And I think a lot of people believe, well, if I pay $30,000, then it's going to be forced down upon me so that it just like soaks into me and I can learn to do this. But there's a certain amount of effort that they have to put out, and I don't think everyone is equipped to really understand or put out that type of effort.
So true.
And I agree. You know, you've got to look at it from their business model as well. Don't look at it from your perspective of this company that you're signing up with. It's a business. They're there to make money. They don't care how many people sign up. You're just a number to them at the end of the day. Where if you find somebody, an individual that you can actually sit down with, it's a different story. Whether it's somebody local or even if it's somebody across the country you can sit and have a phone conversation with every week or once a month. But if you're just going to be on some kind of group call or you go to a couple seminars a year, it's not the same connection. And like you say, it's going to be the individual and their motivation to succeed. It's not going to be the program that's ever going to make you successful.
Yeah. So what makes someone right to be coached? Like, what are the qualities that a mentee or a coachee has
Willing
to have?
not only learn, but listen and be able to implement the knowledge that the person is trying to teach to them.
Yeah, and I think it's just a willingness. They've got to be willing to try things, to step outside of their norm, to push themselves. It's about sacrifice. I mean, you really got to put the time and energy and effort into what you're trying to learn and master. It's not a get rich quick scheme, this whole real estate mindset. It's time, it's effort, it's energy. It takes a lot to be successful.
Yeah. Now, I actually have paid for coaching, and I probably paid around $10,000, and this was 5 or 6 years ago, into a coaching training program. On the one hand, I don't think I'm very coachable. I don't think I am the right person to always receive advice and just do what I'm told, what my coach says to do. But on the other hand, when I paid that money, I knew exactly what I wanted out of the program. I wanted to learn a particular technique that I could put to use. And I wanted something very specific I wanted was the marketing material. I wanted to learn how to market myself. And I definitely got that out of the program. That was a big help. So at the end of the day, did the coaching lead to, while I was being coached, I did not do any big apartment deals. I was in the middle of doing one that fell apart. But then within 6 months after the coaching program ended, I ended up doing a very big apartment deal. So I think that there was some value there to me. And I certainly got my $10,000 worth. But I look at myself and I'm like, well, I kind of have a very particular way that I want to do things. And sometimes I just don't want to listen to what other people tell me I should do. whether it's in my best interest or not.
And I can agree with that. I've looked at a lot of the different programs too. And sometimes you're not buying the coaching, you're buying their systems. You're buying their programs or their platforms that they have in place already. So like you say, if the individual is not coachable, or like in our case where we don't necessarily need the coaching, but we may want the program that they're offering.
Or some material.
Or the material, yeah. And it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, that's true. You have to know what you want out of the program,
exactly.
and know how you're going to get that out of the program, because you might find that your personality does not mesh with the particular coach. Because not everybody's going to work well together. There might be a great coach out there for you, but you might have to go through several of them to find that person. I had a great coach. I mean, he really knew his stuff, and he had a lot of great advice. I had a very technical problem with him, though, is that every time I talked to him, we had a bad phone connection. So he would be giving me great advice, and I would have to sit there saying, repeat that, please, because I didn't get it. I'm trying to write this down, and you're breaking up. So he either had a bad connection or a bad phone, and I feel like that took away from my experience. I would have probably benefited more had we had a better phone connection.
Yeah, and it's little things. I mean, we meet these people all the time that went to a seminar and signed up for a program, and you talk to them 8 months later because you just randomly run into them, and they're not in real estate at all. They're mad that they paid the money. It didn't do anything for them. And I think you see more of that than you do the success stories on the other end. Or you see more guys like us that'll just pay for it for the material. I think there's a combination of the few, but the ones that can do it and are going to stick to it, I think for the people that actually have programs out there, they're probably all great programs. It's just a matter of if you're going to stick to it and follow the program and put the time in that's required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's the 80%, the 80-20 rule. It's 80% of the people who buy a particular program are just not going to use it. They're going to pay for it and not use it. It's that 20% that are going to use it and put it to, try to make some money off of it. And of that 20%, 80% of them might do one or two deals and just stop. But the other 20% are going to excel and really be successful at what they're learning, because they figure out a way to make that material work for them.
Yep. And I agree with that. I mean, I've got programs that we've bought at different conferences and conventions and stuff that are still shrink wrapped on a shelf. I mean, it sounded great, and the guy really sold me on it at the time, and I've just never gone back through it because you get busy with life. So one of these days, maybe I'll sit down and listen to it and walk through the program
and learn something.
Yeah. But again, I bought it for the material. I bought it for that little nugget in there. I didn't buy the whole program, I guess. It's a different situation.
Yeah, and that reminds me, one thing I will say in strong support of mentoring and coaching and the training that a lot of these gurus or instructors provide is that no matter what you're paying, you're still paying a lot less than you would to get a college degree in this area, which probably would be out of date and not really responsive to the actual market. So you're getting training from people who are actually doing it and not just theory.
Exactly. Well, and look at us. I mean, we all have degrees. So what's that doing for us today in our career?
I have a bachelor's degree that I would. From day one, I never put it on my resume. I don't need the degree, but it was great.
It was an amazing experience, and it's one of those teaching opportunities in life that I suggest and recommend to everybody. But at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper, and it's not a true measure of accomplishment in my mind, I guess.
Exactly. Well, yeah, the training that I've received and the learning that I paid for in real estate investing has far exceeded the benefits of my college degree.
I'd agree.
Yeah. So our recommendation to Barry in Chicago, starting with you, Rob, should he pay $25,000?
Depends on how serious he is on wanting to move forward. It's just like a real estate deal. You look at it, you analyze it, does it make sense? And if it's worth moving forward, move forward. But, only you can make that choice.
Yeah.
If you want it, take it.
Justin?
I'd go find somebody local. Keep that 25 grand in your pocket and use it to find a deal.
Local first.
Local first.
I would agree. I would agree somewhere between both of you. I agree with Rob in that. Look at yourself, Barry. Are you prepared to take on the responsibility that comes with spending $25,000? And are you going to be coachable and a good mentee? And then also ask yourself, is there someone local who you could learn from just as well, if not better, and put that money to use in that partnership and in that relationship? Let's go on to our next question, which comes from Jeff in Grand Rapids. After 3 years of managing my own single-family and multifamily rentals, I took your advice and hired a professional third-party management company. Now, I thought this would give me greater peace of mind, but in the first 3 months, my occupancy has dropped from 100% to 83%. I wonder why. And my expenses have doubled. Is this typical? What questions should I be asking my management company? This seemed like a good company. Have I made a huge mistake? Wow, that is a good question. I think there's more. There's a lot
to read into there. Yeah.
There's a lot not said in there.
Let's have Justin start this one.
Okay. Justin, you had a strong reaction to this question. What's going on here?
I think there's a lot that you've got to read into there. I guess I self-manage just because I personally believe that nobody's going to care for your properties like you do. Your bottom line is going to be more meaningful to you than it is to a property management company. With a property management company, you're one of however many customers and clients they have. But that being said, the time period you gave of 3 months isn't a long enough run to really truly evaluate them either. And the fact that your occupancy went down, you may have had some underlying issues with bad tenants, non-paying tenants that they finally evicted and got out of there too. So I think there's a lot there that doesn't translate into your message. If you're trying to free up your time and trying to worry less about it, I think property management's a great thing for you. But with that comes some additional cost, and you've got to let go of a little bit more and give them some time to work through some of the hitches that come along.
Rob, how would you hold the management company accountable to make sure that things don't get any worse?
I would set up a meeting and I would say, could you please explain to me why, when I was self-managing, I had 100% occupancy and what happened to bring it down to 83, and why are my expenses more? Please show me on a spreadsheet so I can understand and we can resolve this and, get it back on track, because clearly something's happened.
And what is your guess as to how that conversation would go?
It might be a little combative, perhaps. However, I would simply stick to my guns and say, look, I'm simply trying to analyze the data and come up with the best solution. I'm not necessarily trying to put a target on your back. However, you are the person managing the asset, and let's break it down and let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And you should get some of those answers with the reporting given to you as well. And it's a good question to ask property managers of how do they treat repair items. Are they sending their own person out first to take a look at it and then calling, say, a plumber, electrician, HVAC guy? How are those trip charges adding up? How do they handle maintenance? Are there things that came up, like an inspection that they had to go through and do an inspection for your lease or city inspection, so they needed to do a bunch of improvements just because your inspection period was coming to an end. So there's some other issues there, I think, that you've got to look into. But talking to them about maintenance, how they handle repairs, you may have had a lease up fee in there that reduces your overall net to you. So there's a lot of things that you go through with different property managing.
I would say that if they were managing themselves, it's an extension of how well were they managing. Because having 100% occupancy indicates to me that they probably were not charging as much as they could. They probably had tenants in there who were happy to stay, maybe not happy to pay. And how good were they at getting rid of tenants who were not paying their rent? So if a new management company comes in, typically what they're going to find is that the previous management company or the previous owner who was self-managing was just not doing things as professionally as they could. Hence, you're going to find people moving out, possibly being evicted, moving out when their rents go up, and you're going to see that drop in occupancy. So hopefully, if it's a good management company, you'll see that drop in occupancy. You'll see that increase in expenses, but over time, everything will get better. Your occupancy will go back up. Your income will go higher than it ever was before, and your expenses will go back down.
My recommendation would be that anyone that is thinking to going to management, first of all, should make sure that they find a company that they're comfortable with, and that they also, the property manager is conveying, look, this is our expectation for your portfolio, and this is what is probably going to happen. And just, having that conversation so that it's not such a bump in the road, and, the person who is the investor understands that, things are going to change, obviously, under a different regime.
Right. And now, Rob, I know that you have talked to different management companies. What are the questions you ask to make sure that you might be able to work with them?
I mean, maintenance is huge, and that's a very big concern. Obviously,
Maintenance in what respect?
Just general maintenance. What is, again, what is your trip fee? What is, what do you charge? Who do you use for a plumber, an electrician? Who's your HVAC? What are the costs for all these things? And you can try to estimate cost, just based off, projections. But, really, I really, maintenance is going to be one of your bigger costs, and that would be one of my bigger concerns. What is your lease up cost? Just looking at everything in data and just really analyzing it, and trying to, throw up projections and, all right, what's realistic? And having these conversations and engaging the property manager and making sure that they're on the same page with you, and that, they communicate with you. And when they send you the reports, that you're understanding them, and, that everybody's on the same page. It's very important.
And what reports should you require from your management company? What should you expect to see at a minimum?
Rent roll, expenses.
Like a profit and loss statement?
Yeah, P&L.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great. I mean, that's what I always look to see, is the rent roll with delinquencies. Who has not paid their rent? I always like to see the delinquencies. And then, of course, when are people moving in? When are people moving out? Because you want to know what, you might be 95% occupied right now today, but maybe 5 people are moving out of your 60-unit apartment. How are they leasing up? Are they pre-filling those units, or are they going to let people move out and then think about putting them on the market? So that marketing is important as well.
If you have a property manager, I don't personally have one at this point, but when I do move forward to that, I need to have a very good, close relationship with them, and and we're working together. It's not that you're just giving everything up completely. You're working as a team, and you're understanding your market and what they're doing, and to obviously maintain occupancy and a good P&L.
So our message to Jeff in Grand Rapids is wait and give your management company a chance to prove themselves.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you've just got to settle into it. It's something new. These were probably your babies that you're trying to let go a little bit. So give them some time, let them prove themselves. If it doesn't work at the year end, then look at something different. Talk to some other management companies along the way, see what they offer, what they could do differently. And continue that conversation with your current property manager and find out, are there ways we can reduce this? You went out once Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Why couldn't we combine this into one trip? Some of that stuff can really make a difference.
Yeah, and Jeff is in Grand Rapids, so we know that there's a lot of really top-notch property management companies. So hopefully he's using one of them, and he just has to relax and give them a chance. All right, let's go on to our next question. Lisa from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Lisa writes, I liked your episode on Dave Ramsey's advice to the investor who was looking to buy a 3-unit and live in one of the units while collecting rent from the other 2. Please have Justin and Rob back on the show. and ask them who else they listen to get advice from. So I guess Justin and Rob, this is all about you guys. Thank you, Lisa, for helping spur me to get Justin and Rob back on the show. I think the question really is like, who do you guys listen to? And maybe we can talk about books and information where you guys get your information from. You want to start, Justin?
Yeah, that's fine. I listen to a ton of different things. I just have an iPod in my truck, so every time I'm in and driving, it's on. I've got a big subscription at Audible, so I listen to a lot of real estate related books, a lot of business books. But then I listen to a ton of other podcasts. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, real estate related podcasts. And there's a lot of great information on them. You've got to find what you like. I like some more than others, and I bounce around.
Let's name some names. So starting with the books that you've listened to lately.
Gary Keller's a great author. He's got 8-10 different books out there, all real estate related. Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Flip, Hold. I'm trying to think of some of the other great ones.
Did he write The One Thing?
He wrote The One Thing. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great books that he's written. He's a great author. Our co-author, I guess, in some of these. They're kind of a collaboration, but a great kind of base knowledge of how investing works. I think he's a great one to get started with. But then I go to Grant Cardone, the 10X rule, and some of that stuff too. Completely different mindset.
What's the 10X rule? What's that about?
Take your goal. Say your goal is to own 1,000 units and multiply it by 10. So you should have 10,000 units instead. That should be your goal. And then when you meet that, multiply it by 10 again.
So set your
sights way higher. Yes. Yep. And he's a fun one to listen to. He reads his own books. So he gets a little off tangent a little bit. And you can't have your kids in the car while you're listening to it at times, but he's kind of a fun guy to listen to. But he is very high energy, very, emotional, and just kind of drives that point home of, always dream bigger than what you think is even possible. So great book to listen to. Another good guy.
By the way, let me just interject here. I keep this podcast swearing free so that people can listen to this in the car with their kids. So do not worry, listeners. If your kids are in the car, we will not say anything you wish we hadn't said.
You've got a dumb button around somewhere, right? You can bleep us out.
I have a little buzzer here. It actually electrocutes your chair. Yeah. So if you say something, you'll be zapped.
That's good. Yeah. Podcast wise, besides this one, which is the best, I listen to Bigger Pockets all the time. I get into the real estate guys. There's a couple different flip podcasts I listen to. I listen to a bunch of random business ones too periodically. I can't think of the economist guy I listen to quite a bit. There's one economist that has a business podcast, so he's really interesting. But yeah, it just go online and search. I mean, there's so much free or very cheap information out there.
What do you pay for your Audible books? What are you paying for that?
I pay I forget what it is. I want to say it's like $250, and then you get 25 downloads or something like that. I think it's like a subscription of some sort.
Okay.
So it's great. It's like $10 a book. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you can download them.
You get to listen to the author read them, or
somebody reads. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I am not a reader. If I sit down and read, I'll fall asleep in about 5 minutes. So
you live way out in the middle of nowhere, so you spend a lot of time in your car.
Yeah, you do.
It's hard to read while you're driving.
It is, and I just can't sit down at night and read. So the Audible books, the podcasts, are great for me. They work out really well. So yeah, I'd head that direction and just find something you like. Find a niche that you're interested in and listen and look them up.
Yeah. What non-real estate related things might you listen to?
I get into the business realm a little bit. That always intrigues me. I'm trying to think of book-wise. Anything like Good to Great. The One Thing is not really real estate related. Even you get into like 4 Week our 4-Hour Work Week and 7 Habits. I'm trying to think of all the great books that you listen to. But then I get into a lot of...
Tim Ferriss has a good podcast, and I'm reading his book now, which is basically a distillation of all of his podcast interviews. It's called The Tools of the Titans.
Okay.
Great. Just so much great information in that book.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. There's so much great information out there. So it just depends on what your interests are. I mean, listen to something that piques your interest. So yeah. I love, the economic outlooks and some business stuff. I listen to all of Robert Kiyosaki's stuff, even though I don't always follow his guidance. But
yeah, you're more of a Dave Ramsey guy.
I am. I'm more of a Dave Ramsey guy. But you can only listen to so much Dave, too. So you got to bounce around.
Rob, what about you? Who do you listen to or read or get your information
I'm
from?
more like Justin. I will fall asleep if I read a book. I do have audiobooks that I do listen to when I have time. I really do like Bigger Pockets. Obviously, I do listen to your podcast. A book that I actually am listening to right now is Think and Grow Rich, and I'm enjoying that so far.
Hill. That's an excellent
it's a great book.
That's a classic.
I'm enjoying that. So, and then non-real estate related, I really try to follow the business markets, interest rates, just the economy in general. I find very intriguing and interesting. There are many outlets to get that. There's a ton of information out there with the internet today. If you really are inquisitive, you can find what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you almost run the danger of excellent information overload. Like there's just so much great information that's available now for free that it's you just can't keep up with all of it. So at some point, I like to take a step back, and So I listen to a lot of the things you guys just mentioned. I'm reading that Tim Ferriss book right now, which is a great kind of signpost to a lot of great interviews that he's done on his show that I can go back and listen to. And I've listened to some fascinating interviews there. There's a good podcast I like called The Art of Charm, which has some top-notch interviews as well. But then I also, coming from the entertainment industry, sometimes I just like to turn off the real estate and the business side and just listen to some entertainment shows. So I like Mark Maron's WTF podcast. Okay. Yeah. He's a stand-up comedian who interviews actors and comedians and people who make movies and TV and all that. So good interviews there. And I like the Nerdist podcast, which is a kind of the name sort of indicates what it's about. It's the same guy who hosts, if you watch The Walking Dead, he hosts The Talking Dead. So he has a podcast where he interviews a lot of funny people who are also actors, and so just you get a lot of great Hollywood stories and things like that. So
very neat.
I enjoy that.
Yeah. I like watching some of the TV shows too. It kind of started off back with Shark Tank and The Prophet. I love The Prophet.
Yeah,
there's
The
a new
Prophet's
one.
great.
Yeah, there's a new one, The Deed. I started watching that. So
what is that on? I gotta check that out.
I think it's the same thing. I think it's CNBC. But there's so many good shows out there like that where, yes, there's a lot of added drama to things, but there's a lot of great business insight in the context of the show. So yeah. I agree. It provides the entertainment factor as well as some of that knowledge base that you need to build. So
yeah, I love The Prophet. What gets me though is I know I've read interviews with him where he says it's real. They're not producing it or staging it. Now, I know there's a certain amount of producing and staging going on.
Slightly.
But the personalities, he's always dealing with just these people.
Crazy people.
Who can't, you wonder how is it they ever had a successful business to begin with, because they are just off the wall crazy or abusive or difficult or whatever. And it's almost fascinating from a psychological standpoint to watch that show.
It is. It is. And it helps remind you a little bit of, okay, I need to avoid this. These are some habits that I have that I've got to get away from because I don't want to be that guy. But it is a good thing. It has an entertainment value, but there's a ton of great business insight, that goes into some of those shows. So there's a lot of good information out there. I guess that's the bottom line. It's just you've got to spend the time to listen to it or watch it or read it.
Yeah, and the great thing about the prophet on CNBC is he does spend a lot of time kind of explaining, well, look, if you have a restaurant, you need to have a certain number of tables and chairs.
Yep.
And you need to clear those tables and chairs at an interval of like,
Yes.
every 60 minutes or whatever.
Yep.
And that way you serve this many meals and make this much money. And if you can add more space for chairs and clear people faster. I mean, he really breaks it down into a mathematical formula.
Exactly.
That makes sense. And you're like, wow, that's really incredible.
Yeah.
And he knows these things.
He does. And, even go back further. I still spend quite a bit of time diving through local newspapers even. I know it sounds crazy, but I want to know what's going on in my market specifically as far as new development, what the planning boards are going through, what zoning is changing. There's a lot of information on that end as well that I find very interesting, and I kind of keep up on a personal level. So
yeah, absolutely, great point. Because I get the Grand Rapids Business Journal, I get the regular newspaper, which is it's really
M Live,
and Associated Press, but it's the Grand Rapids Press. I get that because you're right. You get great nuggets of local news that is important to know if you're buying and investing in that area.
And I get the newspaper and I read maybe one or two articles out of the whole thing, but those one or two articles are critical to me and my movement in the market. So
Is the Reminder still around?
yeah, I get the Reminder and the Sun and News and all those are tiny little local newspapers. They're just little city town type papers. So, but they cover a lot of the planning meetings and zoning meetings and stuff like that. So there's a lot of critical things that go on. And I love the business section in the Grand Rapids Press and stuff too, because they talk about some of the bigger real estate deals that have closed or, some offers that are in or future development plans. So there's some of that stuff that is really neat, and it's a good thing to stay up on in your local market as well.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. If you're investing in a particular market, getting the local paper or the local business journal, it's vital.
It is. As crazy as it sounds.
It's a business expense, really. I mean, you have to have it.
It's not crazy at all. You have to know your demographics.
Yeah. So you search kind of globally for this base knowledge, and then you've got to transmit it down to a local level in some way. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's see, how are we doing? Do we have time for one more question here?
Sure.
I think we do.
Throw it out
we
there.
Do.
We can
All right.
quick.
Tyler in Cincinnati writes, I am in the process of refinancing a 15 unit that I purchased 4 years ago. Due to the improved market conditions, lower cap rates, and forced appreciation, I'm in a position where I could do a cash out refinance and pull out over $250,000. My problem is that I'm not sure what to do with this money since I don't have any new deals on the horizon. Should I pull this money out and pay the higher monthly mortgage just in case I come across a deal where I can use it? Or should I increase my equity in the property and pay a lower monthly mortgage? Now, I love this question, Tyler. Thanks for sending it, because I actually went through different numbers, but the exact same dilemma recently. And Justin, you and I had a conversation. So I'm going to start with you because you had excellent advice for me.
Yeah.
So let me just summarize. Tyler can do a cash out refi on his 15 unit.
Yep.
Pull about $250,000 out, but he doesn't know what to do with that money. He'll be paying a higher mortgage
payment. Yes.
Should he pull the money out or just keep the equity in the property and refi at a lower value?
And we had this discussion, like you said. And the issue is yes, you could pull this cash out, but what do you do with it? It's not making you money, and you're paying interest on it. So you're really losing money on this $250,000 you pull out. And what we had talked about is doing a line of credit, a commercial line of credit on the additional equity. So that way you have the funds available if you need them. So if you do find an apartment deal or something you want to buy, you can pull that money out again, but you don't have to go through the whole mortgage process to get that extra $250,000. And I guess I'd kind of stick to those guidelines a little bit, because just having that cash sit there, it's going to disappear before you know it. And how you knew it went where, you just gotta leave it there as much as you can. And then when you find something that you need it for, you can pull it out at that point with the line of credit.
Yeah. So Tyler can have his cake and his cupcake
at a later date.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't need to go stale in the meantime.
Yeah. So just to make that as simple as possible, the answer with a line of credit.
Yeah.
Going back to your answer is refi at the lower amount. Keep the equity in the property.
Yep.
Refinance, have a lower monthly payment. Your loan to value is gonna, it's gonna
be great.
Could be like, you could have 50% equity in the property, which gives you, a lot of
room.
Flexibility.
Flexibility, peace of mind.
Yeah.
But you take that additional 25% equity and you turn it into a line of credit.
Yep.
So as long as you don't tap into that line of credit,
you don't pay interest on that money.
You're not paying interest on it.
And you've already paid for the appraisal, and the bank's not going to charge you that much in fees to add that line of credit. That's the advantage of doing it at that time. You could always go back years later and do it and add that line of credit, but you've already paid for the appraisal and some of the underwriting costs. So it'll be cheaper to do it today than it would in the future.
Yeah. Rob, you come from a financing background. What's your thought?
No, I honestly, I really like that. My only concern would be that the institution, how long would that line of credit be available? That's what I would need to know. Because really, I'm looking for something in the future, because things are quite expensive now. And, I'm thinking, that's a superb idea. Honestly, I have no argument with it. He's right. But just how long is it going to last that I can tap into that equity? Right. That's crucial.
So I kind of have the answer, because I went through this exact same thing. So it's almost eerie that we got this email. I was looking at refinancing my 12 unit here in town, and I had about $200,000 that I could pull out, because that's how much the value has just gone up in the past 4 or 5 years. Actually, it was only 3 years. It had been 3 years, but I wanted to lock in. I started with this in mind. I wanted to lock in the low interest rates before they start going back up again.
Yep.
Knowing that it's a commercial mortgage, I wanted to see if I could get more than a 5-year term. In other words, in 5 years, I don't want to have to worry about a balloon payment. I'd rather push it out to 7 to 10 years. Okay. But then at the same time, I didn't know what to do with the $200,000 I was going to pull out. I didn't have any deal to put it into, and the interest cost per year would have been over $10,000. So just taking out that additional $200,000 would have cost me $10,000 a year. So I was sort of talking about this with you, Justin, and you suggested, well, turn it into a line of credit. Get the interest rate to be prime plus 1. In fact, when I got prime plus 0.5, which is even better.
Beautiful.
And just have that available, so if a deal does come along, I can pull it out of the line of credit. It's a floating line of credit, so it's tied to prime plus 0.5. So as interest rates rise, yes, I run the risk of having to pay a higher interest rate on it, but that's all offset by the fact that I'm not paying any interest on it while it's available to me. So I did that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. How long is the length of your line of credit before you've got to renew?
Okay, so thank you. So I just completed the refinance this month, and I was able to get the loan for the lower amount at 4.9%.
Beautiful.
20-year AM. Now, this is a small bank. This is a small commercial loan, so it's under $1 million. So these are typical terms. 4.9%, 20-year amortization. My loan to value is much lower because I only refinanced for the actual outstanding amount on the loan.
What is the term of the loan?
20-year
amortization.
No, but
the 5-year balloon. So
okay, term is 5 years.
The bank was not interested in extending me out 7 to 10 years.
Yep.
But I figure my loan to value is now probably below, like I have more than 50% equity in the property. So I feel like that gives me peace of mind.
Yes.
So if the market tanks and 5 years from now, my property is worth less than what it is now, I won't be underwater.
Yep.
At least that's
the mindset.
my very conservative hope. I mean, if it is underwater, then we'll all be swimming for
We've got bigger issues. Yeah. Yep.
So, anyway, so
the additional equity you got a line of credit with.
Yeah. So speaking of the line of credit, so that line of credit, I had to pay some extra fees to get that line of credit, so it's available to me for a year, and then I have to renew it every year, and it's going to cost me around $300 or $400 a year to renew that line of credit. And that will pay for the bank to kind of revalue the property without having to do an appraisal. They'll just revalue the property.
They'll look at your tax returns and go through that.
Yeah, and which they're going to do anyway because they
own the loan.
That's one of the requirements when they have a loan is they want to see your tax returns every year. So for $300-$400 a year, I can extend this out if I need to. Once I tap into it, then within that year, we'll lock it into a fixed loan.
That's well spent money.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're looking at spending $300 to $400 a year versus $10,000, so it's kind of a no-brainer. And like you say, you come out with all that additional, essentially cash that you're not paying interest on for a few $100 a year. So it's a great way to pull out some equity and not just have it sitting in the bank and really essentially losing you money. So that line of credit can offer a lot of unique opportunities, I guess, in the future.
Yeah. So thank you, Justin, for suggesting that. I'm glad that Tyler from Cincinnati was wondering the same thing. I hope that helps, Tyler.
Yeah. Don't pull it out in the major loan. Just do a line of credit on it so you can capitalize on that equity buildup and use it on another investment in the future.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is, if you did pull it out, maybe you don't have something to use it on right now, but is there money that could go back into the property? Like, are there some capital improvements that you can use that money for, like a new roof, new windows, something where maybe it would benefit you to take some of that money out right now?
Or if you have a deal but don't need the full amount, maybe there's something along those lines where there's a mid-range where you have another deal that takes $100,000. So pull, an additional 100 out for that next deal and leave the other 150 in place. Yeah. There's more than one right answer. It just depends on your situation and scenario, and maybe you're buying stuff left and right still today, so you could use it all within the next year. So then it makes sense to pull it all out.
Yeah, and that's where it's good to have a relationship with a commercial banker for this type of property, because you can have that conversation with your commercial lender and say, look, here's what I have, here's what I want to do, here's the money I need. Help me figure out how to structure this, whether it be with a line of credit or a cash out refi, so that I can achieve what it is I'm looking to achieve.
These are my goals, and help me get there.
Yeah, a good commercial lender is like a partner.
Absolutely.
In this process, and it's vital to helping you sustain the income from your property.
It is. And if you're like Brian looking for that infinite return, you're essentially taking borrowed money, which isn't yours, and buying another property with it. So right away, you're on the infinite return path. Yeah. So those are other options that you can definitely look at.
Well, and that's a good point, because I'd like to think, hey, the investments I do now, I use other people's money. Mm-hmm. But sometimes cash is king, because you might come across a deal that needs to close tomorrow. Well, if I have access to that cash, I can close it tomorrow and then raise the money after the fact.
Yes.
And I've done that before, and it works. It works quite well.
Yeah, I agree.
But having the cash to go in and buy something quickly can make all the difference.
Yeah, it definitely can. Especially if you're dealing with single family stuff, you run into a lot of situations where they need to close as quickly as possible. So having that cash sitting on the sidelines essentially is key to getting the deal. Otherwise, it's going to go by the wayside, and it's going to be somebody else's great opportunity.
Yeah. So Tyler in Cincinnati, thanks for your question. I hope that helps. Getting the line of credit is really a great thing to kind of strive for. All right. Any Any thoughts before we end this conversation?
No, send all your questions to Brian's email so that we can do this again someday.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Send all your questions to Brian's email, and we really enjoy this and want to help you. So please send some questions in, and let's get them answered.
Yeah, so I'll give my email one more time. It's brian@higinvestor.com. Hig, by the way, is Hamrick Investment Group. So that was the domain name I was able to get that was hopefully easy to remember. Brian, BRIAN, at Hig Investor, HIGINVESTOR.com. Brian at HigInvestor.com. Send your questions, and we'll do this again. Justin Workman and Rob Minch, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it was great
you.
again.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.